Hello everybody, this is Mike here once again with another video, and this time I am going to discuss my thoughts on what's been going on with GTA 5 and the bans it's getting from stores in Australia. Target and Kmart have both decided to take the game off the shelves in Australia because of a petition by feminists who believe that the game is sexist. And the reason they feel it's sexist is because of the prostitution you can pick up, have sex with, kill them, and take their money. Something that's been a part of GTA since 3, at least. It might have been there before, but I know it's been there since Grand Theft Auto 3 and onward. Anyway, look, I get why I get the whole feminist movement. I get certain aspects of it. I understand that we as men have a blind spot when it comes to sexism, just like as white people we have a blind spot when it comes to racism. And it's our responsibility to heed those who call out those blind spots, and the gaming industry is no exception. However, calling for bans is dangerous when censorship enters the picture. And even though it's not government censorship, it's a private company. They can do what they want. They can listen to whoever they want. Censorship is still censorship, and that is still dangerous. Whenever there's a moral panic throughout history, whether it's the comic book code, the video nasty era, and I would count the post-Columbine hysteria as well, because that led to the reduction of R-rated films in the States. And it was because of an overreaction by the film studios because of Joe Lieberman and the post-Columbine hysteria. As a result, even to this day, an R-rated film there are fewer R-rated films now than there were back in the 80s and 90s, and even the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So yeah, moral panics have never, ever been good. Ever. I've never been a case where censorship was a good thing. Not to my knowledge. It's always led to problems. It leads to misunderstandings, and that's what this is. Because anybody who's played GTA knows that Grand Theft Auto isn't sexist. Just because you kill women in a game doesn't necessarily mean that the game itself is advocating sexism or advocating thus thing. Grand Theft Auto is about criminals who do bad things, and most of the time, if you play the story, you're going after males. So, yeah, it's just an interactive medium. It's just like movies and television and books that deal with crime and where the main characters are bad guys. It's just there's a controller and you have to participate. That's it. And every time there's been a moral panic too, it's always been disproven. The people who cry for censorship, who say that this is going to destroy everything, they've been proven wrong every time. The comic book scare. What happened there? What did it lead to? The creation of the Tales from the Crypt TV show. The people who created the TV show for Tales from the Crypt, they read those EC comics. Goosebumps, R.L. Stine. He grew up reading those comics, and then he created the same type of story for kids, the same setup, with the twist and all of that. The only difference is it's much more toned down because he's a children's author. So, what it does lead is to creativity. I mean, if violent video games were so bad, and they were going to do everything that Jack Thompson feared they were going to do, we would already have rapid violence because the kids who were playing GTA 3 are adults now. And let's not forget about Mortal Kombat. That was during my era. So and I'm still waiting for that rampant violence, and it's not there. I'm sorry, but it's not. Statistics prove it. So these moral outrages, these moral panics have always been detrimental and have never been based on fact at all. And just because a liberal does it or a progressive does it, even if their cause is just, I mean, these are people who claim to be survivors of sexual violence. So yes, I feel for them, and I understand why they have a strong heart for this issue. But just because you're on the left doesn't make censorship any better. You practically succeeded at what Jack Thompson has tried to do for years and failed at. You guys pulled it off, at least in those 2 stores in Australia. And also, I have to say that Australia is always been has never been very good when it comes to censorship in games. They've always been really bad about it. Let's not forget. Don't remember Saints Row 4 and the dildo. Remember how long it took for them to get R18 ratings on games there. So a lot of people in Australia couldn't play a lot of the big games, the most popular games. And don't think just because it's happening in another country that it's not affecting that it can't affect us here. Fallout 3 was supposed to have real drugs. It was supposed to have morphine. And because of Australia's censorship, they had to make the drugs fake. And they were fake everywhere. So, yeah, censorship in one country can affect other countries. Now, feminism itself has been, when it comes to gaming, has been a two-edged sword. On the one hand, feminism has given us Ellie from The Last of Us. Ellie is one of the most popular characters in that game, and even people who hated Anita Sarkeesian love Ellie. And yet, what they don't know, a lot of people don't know, is that Neil Druckmann watched her Women in Distress gaming series, and that was an influence on Ellie. So on the one hand, it gives us characters like Ellie, games like The Last of Us, and the games like Gone Home, which is basically a 90s lesbian story. Like, you remember those old independent films in the 90s that were about lesbians and gays and all that? It's essentially that type of story, but it's interactive, and it's, from what I hear, it's a great game, and I really want to play it. So on the one hand, that's been helpful, and I do think that even though gaming is expanding and getting better, when it comes to the core games, they're still marketing to men, and it's still very male-dominated. And I would like to see more feminine stories come out. I would like to see a romantic comedy that you can play, for example, or a romantic story that you can play, and have the same game mechanics as something like a Heavy Rain or a BioWare game or an open world game. I think that would create interesting opportunities. But what I don't want to see, and this is the danger of the bad aspect of feminism, what I don't want to see is the male stuff to go. I don't want the male stuff to go away. There are certain elements within the feminist scene that claim that masculinity is toxic, that seeing a woman dress sexy is objectification, and I disagree with those points, because just because you're attracted to somebody doesn't mean you objectify them. I have friends that I find very attractive, but I still care about how they feel. I still care about what they think. I still want them to be comfortable when I'm hanging out with them. And so attraction is not objectification. And so that's something I disagree with feminists on. I was going to make another point, and I just slipped my mind. But the problem is some of the feminists. I mean, there are a lot of feminists that are actually really cool and make really good points. But some of the feminists, the more extreme ones, the more anti-male ones, they feel like if you disagree with them on any of their tenets, you're sexist. And that's not true. Yes, I understand that we men have a blind spot when it comes to issues of sexism, and they need to be pointed out. But that doesn't mean that just because we're men and just because we like guy stuff, that we're sexist. And I don't want to see the male culture go away. I've seen it gone away on other mediums in a big way. Look at children's television. There's hardly any action shows on anymore. It's either comedies, or it's either animated comedies or sitcoms. And most of the sitcoms are female-oriented. So there's not a lot of action anymore. The biggest action block now is Toonami, and that's for grown-ups. Or teenagers, I would say. I consider Toonami okay for teenagers as well. So, yeah, there are real sexist issues out there, but calling for bans is not the way to handle it. And the gaming industry, the gaming community is not your enemy. It's the conservatives that want to claim a war on women, who want to take away your rights and everything. That's the danger. So yes, there's actual sexism, and there are issues that women face that we men don't have to worry about. And I feel the winter section in The Last of Us does a great job of demonstrating that danger and depicting it in a game. But again, when you call for censorship, that leads to moral panic, and that leads to a very dangerous road. Just because I like The Last of Us and I want more games like that, it doesn't mean I want to see GTA 5 and those types of games go away. I don't. I adore GTA, just like I adore The Last of Us, and I really want to play Come Home, but I still like my masculine games too. I still like my nerdy games. So I want to, yes, I want to see more diversity in games themselves, and we're seeing that now, but what I don't want to see is censorship. Censorship has never, ever led to any positive outcome, ever. And Grand Theft Auto, for the record, is not sexist. Yes, it is. The storyline in Grand Theft Auto 5 is a bromance, basically. It's a satirical take on the buddy action movie. So, yeah, it's very male-centric, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great. I like that. And yes, I would like to see a GTA in the future that has a female protagonist. I think there's strong potential for good storytelling there, but here, what they did here was perfectly fine, and I'm enjoying it. And one more thing I wanted to talk about before I leave is satire. GTA is satire, just like other great satires, whether it's Dr. Strangelove, Natural Born Killers, Network, RoboCop. And satire, I feel, has always made people uncomfortable, because my definition of satire is when they use humor. When humor is used to say something serious or to critique something. GTA 5 is a perfect example of that. And I think a lot of people, when you look at how people have acted towards satire in the past, they don't understand it. But the thing is, I feel like they're affected by it. I feel like it hits home in them in a certain way that makes them uncomfortable. And so, rather than deal with that and understand that, they rather lash out at the mature content in the game and say that it's either sexist or say that it's too violent and all that. But really, because there's plenty of violent material out there and plenty of violent games that nobody really dots an eye over, but when you put a satirical edge on it, when you say something serious through humor, it makes people uncomfortable, and I think that's why there's such negative blowback to things like GTA, because it's very similar to the negative blowback to Natural Born Killers, another brilliant satire with a lot of violence in it that is also very critical of our culture. And so there you go. Those are my thoughts on this issue. I really hope that Target and Kmart will do the right thing and put the game back on the shelves. And as healthy as the discussion of women in games is, when it leads to censorship or demonizing gamers, which is what the anti-Gamergate movement is trying to do, that's where the issues are. When you try to take away something or to demonize a culture or whatever, that's not the way to go. It's not the way to help the medium grow. Try inserting your own ideas of what you'd like to see done instead of trying to take away other people's ideas, because when you start trying to impose yourself on others, that's what the conservatives do. And this is exactly what Jack Thompson has wanted to do for years, and the people here who signed this petition, who made this petition, have managed to pull that off. And that's a very, very bad thing. So let's get GTA back. Let's get more people playing it. Let's continue the discussion about feminism and gaming, and let's do it in a more constructive way, create new ideas, and not result to shaming and censorship. So that's all I got to say on this topic, and so I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.